The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was a massive dome made of crystal and light. It floated in the darkness of space, far from any planet. A neutral ground where the 12 elder species came together to discuss the fate of the galaxy. Thousands of delegates filled the curved seats that rose like waves around the central speaking platform. Creatures of all shapes and sizes watched and listened. Some had scales. Some had wings. Some had no bodies at all, just clouds of glowing energy. And among them, in a small section near the eastern curve, sat the humans. Ambassador Una Park stood at her seat, her hands folded in front of her. She was a small woman with short black hair and calm eyes. She wore the simple gray uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. No medals, no decorations, just the small blue badge of her office on her chest. She had been Earth's voice in this council for 15 years, and in all that time, she had never raised her voice. Not once. Today, like many days before, she was being laughed at. High Counselor Drath stood on the central platform. He was a Valorian, a species that looked like a mix between a lizard and a bear. His skin was dark green, covered in thick scales. His eyes were yellow and filled with pride. The Valorians were warriors. They had conquered 17 star systems before joining the council. They believed strength was the only thing that mattered. And so, Drath said, his deep voice echoing through the hall, the humans once again ask us to consider more talks, more meetings, more words. He spread his massive arms wide. Tell me, Ambassador Park, does your species ever grow tired of begging? Laughter rolled through the hall. The insectoid Keth clicked their jaws in amusement. The tall, thin Morvans shook their long heads. Even some of the peaceful species smiled behind their hands. Una did not react. She simply waited for the laughter to fade. The border dispute between the Valorian Empire and the Orwan Republic can be solved through negotiation, she said. Her voice was soft but clear. There is no need for military action. Both sides have legitimate claims. A treaty can address them. Drath snorted. Treaties are paper. Paper burns. Only strength lasts. He looked around the hall, enjoying the support he saw in many eyes. This is what happens when a species has no warriors. They become afraid of everything. They hide behind words because they cannot hold a weapon. We can hold weapons, Una said calmly. We choose not to. Because you are afraid. Because we are wise. More laughter. Drath waved his hand dismissively. The council will vote on the Orwan matter tomorrow. I trust common sense will win over human cowardice. He stepped down from the platform, and the session ended. Delegates began to leave, many of them glancing at the human section with pity or amusement. Poor humans. So advanced in science, so clever with machines, but so weak in spirit. Una gathered her documents and walked out through a side corridor. Her assistant, a young man named Doyun Shin, fell into step beside her. That was harsh, Doyun said quietly. Even by Drath standards. He is testing us, Una replied. He wants to see how far he can push before we push back. And how far is that? Una did not answer. They walked in silence through the long crystal hallways until they reached the human embassy, a modest set of rooms in one of the station's outer rings. Inside, waiting for them, was a man in a dark military uniform. Admiral Taehyun Kang was 60 years old, but he looked younger. His hair was gray at the sides, his face lined with old stress and older patience. He commanded the United Earth Fleet, all 300 ships that protected humanity's colonies across a dozen star systems. He stood by the window, looking out at the stars. I watched the session, he said without turning around. Drath is getting bolder. He smells blood, Una said. She sat down at her desk and rubbed her eyes. The council sees us as weak. The more they laugh, the more he pushes. Taehyun turned to face her. Our intelligence reports show Valorian warships gathering near the outer colonies. 40 ships so far. Maybe more coming. Doyun looked alarmed. Are they planning an attack? Not yet, Taehyun said. They are watching, waiting. They want to see what we do. And what will we do? Doyun asked. Una and Taehyun exchanged a look. It was a look that carried years of shared understanding. They had known each other since the academy. They had served together through 3 diplomatic crises. They knew things about humanity that the galaxy had never seen. "We will do nothing," Yuna said finally. "For now," Doyun frowned. "Nothing? But if they attack, they will not attack," Yuna said. "Not yet. Drath wants a reason. He wants us to give him an excuse. A threat. An insult. Something he can use to justify a war to the Council." She shook her head. "We will not give him that." "How long do we keep pretending?" Taehyun asked quietly. Yuna looked at him. "Until they force us to stop." That night, Yuna stood alone on the observation deck of the station. The galaxy spread out before her, millions of stars burning in the endless dark. She thought about Earth. She thought about its long, bloody history. The wars, the suffering, the lessons that had been carved into humanity's soul with fire and steel. The other species did not know. They had never asked. They saw humans as peaceful, quiet, and afraid. They did not understand that humanity's peace was not weakness. It was a choice, a hard, painful choice made by a species that had seen the worst of itself and decided to be better. But choices could change. If pushed far enough, even the gentlest creature would bare its teeth. Yuna hoped it would not come to that. She hoped Drath would see reason. She hoped the Council would find wisdom. But deep in her heart, she knew hope was not enough. She had read the old histories. She knew what humans were capable of, and she knew that somewhere, in the dark spaces between stars, Drath was gathering his ships and dreaming of conquest. The galaxy thought humans feared war. They were about to learn the truth. The cargo ship Heaven's Light was not a warship. It carried no weapons. It had no armor. It was simply a large, slow vessel that moved supplies and people between Earth's outer colonies. On this particular journey, it carried 3,000 civilians, families, children, workers returning home after long contracts on distant stations. They were ordinary people living ordinary lives. They never saw the missiles coming. The attack happened in the dead of night, ship time. Most passengers were sleeping. The Heaven's Light was passing through a region of space near the Valorian border, a route it had taken hundreds of times before. There was no warning, no communication, just 4 bright flashes of light, and then the ship broke apart like a toy in the hands of an angry child. 3,000 souls, gone in seconds. The news reached Earth 6 hours later. It spread through the colonies like fire through dry grass. Shock turned to grief. Grief turned to anger. In the streets of Seoul and New Shanghai, and the domed cities of Mars, people gathered and wept and demanded answers. Ambassador Yuna Park received the news in her office on the Council station. She read the report twice, her face completely still. Then she set down her tablet and closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them again, her assistant Do-Yun was standing in the doorway, his face pale. "The Valorians are claiming it was an accident," he said. "They say the Heaven's Light entered a military training zone. They say it was the ship's fault." "The ship was on its registered route," Yuna said quietly. "It was nowhere near any military zone." "I know. But Drath is already speaking to the Council. He is expressing regret for the tragic accident." Do-Yun's voice was bitter. "He does not look sorry." Yuna stood up. "Contact Admiral Kang. And get me Captain Min-Ji Cho." Min-Ji Cho arrived at the station 2 days later. She commanded a small reconnaissance ship called the Silent Dawn. It was fast, quiet, and equipped with the most advanced sensors humanity had ever built. Min-Ji herself was a woman of 35 with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She had served in Earth's intelligence service for 10 years before taking command of the Dawn. She did not smile often. "Ambassador," she said, saluting as she entered Yuna's office. "Admiral Kang briefed me on the way here. What do you need?" "The truth," Yuna said. "The Valorians claim it was an accident." "I need proof of what really happened." Min-Ji nodded. "I have already begun analysis of the debris field. The missile signatures are Valorian military grade. The attack came from at least 2 ships working together. This was not an accident. This was a planned strike. Can you prove it beyond any doubt? Give me 72 hours. I will give you evidence that even the Council cannot ignore." Min-Ji worked without rest. Her crew scanned every piece of wreckage, traced every energy signature, and reconstructed the final moments of the heaven's light second by second. They found fragments of Valorian missiles. They found communication signals that had been poorly erased. They found the names of the ships that had fired. On the third day, Minji delivered her report to Yuna. It was complete. It was undeniable. It was damning. The Galactic Council assembled for an emergency session. The Great Hall was packed. Every species sent their highest representatives. Rumors had spread. Everyone wanted to see what the humans would do. High Counselor Drath sat in his elevated seat, looking relaxed. His yellow eyes watched the human delegation with amusement. He had played this game many times before. Smaller species had accused the Valorians of crimes before. They had presented evidence before. And every time, Drath had twisted words, applied pressure, and walked away free. He expected nothing different today. Yuna walked to the central platform. She moved slowly, carrying a small data device in her hands. The hall fell silent. 3,000 of my people are dead, she said. Her voice was calm, steady, almost gentle. Families, children, innocent lives ended without warning or mercy. She activated the device. Above her, a massive holographic display flickered to life. It showed the heaven's light in its final moments. The missiles, the explosions, the ship tearing itself apart. The Valorian Empire claims this was an accident. They claim our ship entered a military zone. Yuna paused. This is a lie. She pressed another button. The display changed to show communication logs, missile trajectories, and ship identification codes. These are Valorian military missiles, fired from Valorian warships. The ships were the Burning Claw and the Iron Storm. They were not conducting training exercises. They were hunting. They waited for our ship. They attacked without warning. They murdered 3,000 civilians. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Drath's smile faded slightly. This evidence is fabricated, he said loudly. Human lies to damage the reputation of the Valorian Empire. Yuna did not look at him. The evidence has been verified by independent analysis from the Orwin Science Council and the Morvan Technical Institute. It is authentic. Now the murmurs grew louder. The Orwin and Morvan delegations shifted uncomfortably but did not deny Yuna's claim. Drath stood up, his scales bristling. Even if this evidence is real, what will you do about it, human? Write a complaint, file a protest. You have no strength. You have no will. You are nothing but a species of frightened children playing at diplomacy. Yuna finally looked at him. Her eyes were calm, but something had changed in them. Something cold. We demand the immediate surrender of the officers responsible for this attack, she said. We demand them delivered to Earth for trial. We give you 72 hours to comply. Laughter exploded through the hall. Drath laughed loudest of all. Or what? He roared. What will you do when we refuse? Yuna's expression did not change. You will learn why we choose peace. The laughter continued. But some of the older species had stopped. They looked at the small human woman with new eyes. They saw something in her face that made them uneasy. Yuna turned and walked off the platform. Behind her, Drath was still laughing, but his voice seemed less certain now. 72 hours. The countdown had begun. The Galactic Archive was the largest library in known space. It occupied an entire moon, hollowed out and filled with the collected knowledge of 1,000 civilizations. Every species that joined the council was required to share their history, their science, their culture. Everything was stored here, preserved for eternity. Dr. Sunho Lee worked in the human section of the archive. He was a quiet man of 50 with gentle eyes and gray-streaked hair. He had spent his entire adult life studying history, first on Earth and then here among the stars. He loved his work. He loved the peace of the endless halls, the soft glow of data crystals, the feeling of being surrounded by the memories of countless worlds. But today, he felt no peace. News of the ultimatum had spread quickly. The whole station was talking about it. A human deadline. A human threat. It seemed impossible, laughable, and yet something in Ambassador Park's voice had made people nervous. Sunho was organizing files when they came to him. 3 alien scholars, each from a different species. The first was Morath, an Orwin. a gentle herbivore species with soft fur and large, dark eyes. The second was Vex, a Keth, one of the insectoid creatures allied with the Valorians. The third was Tellan, a Morvan, tall and thin with skin like silver paper. Dr. Lee, Morith said softly. We wish to understand. We have heard the human ultimatum. We have seen the reaction of the council. But we do not understand the humans themselves. Sun Ho set down his work. What do you wish to know? Your history. Vex clicked. We know humans are peaceful. We know you avoid conflict. But Counselor Drath says you are cowards. Others say you are simply wise. We wish to understand which is true. Tellan nodded his long head. Perhaps if we show the Valorians your history, they will see you mean no real threat. Perhaps they will offer mercy. Sun Ho was silent for a long moment. He looked at the three scholars, at their curious, innocent faces. They came from species that had known war, but not like humans had known it. Their wars had been small things, border disputes, resource conflicts, nothing that scarred the soul of an entire species. You want to see human history, he said slowly. Are you certain? Yes, Morith said. We wish to understand. Sun Ho walked to a console and entered a long series of codes. The walls around them flickered, and suddenly they were standing in darkness. Stars appeared overhead. A blue and green planet hung before them. This is Earth, Sun Ho said. Our home. It is a beautiful world, but its history is written in blood. He began with the ancient times, wars between tribes, wars between cities, wars between empires. The scholars watched images of soldiers with swords and spears, of cities burning, of bodies piled in fields. It was brutal, but not unfamiliar. Many species had similar histories. Then Sun Ho moved forward in time. This was called the First World War, he said. It lasted 4 years. 37 million people died. The scholars stared at the number. 37 million. More than the entire population of some species. Images filled the air around them. Trenches stretching across muddy fields. Men charging into walls of gunfire. Poison gas rolling across battlefields, melting the lungs of soldiers who breathed it. Machines of war, tanks and planes and artillery, built for the sole purpose of killing as many people as possible. Morath's gentle face had gone pale. This cannot be, he whispered. These numbers must be wrong. They are accurate, Sun Ho said quietly. And this was not the worst. He showed them the Second World War. 60 million dead. Entire cities burned to ash by fire and bomb. He showed them the camps where humans had murdered other humans by the millions. Not in battle, but in cold, systematic slaughter. Vex made a sound like breaking glass. The Keth had fought wars, but nothing like this. Nothing so vast. Nothing so terrible. How? Tellan asked, his silver skin flickering with distress. How could one species do this to itself? Sun Ho did not answer. Instead, he showed them the bomb, a single weapon, a single flash of light, and a city of hundreds of thousands simply ceased to exist. Then another city, then tests, dozens of them, hundreds of them, weapons growing larger and larger, until humans held the power to crack their own world in half. Morath fell to his knees and vomited. His body shook with horror. You did this to yourselves, he gasped. Your own people. Your own children. Yes, Sun Ho said. His voice was heavy with an old weight. We are not a species that fears war. We are a species that knows war. Every horror it can bring, every sin it can create, every cost it demands. Tellan was trembling. Then why do you choose peace? With this history, with these weapons, you could conquer the galaxy. Sun Ho turned off the display. The stars faded. They stood again in the quiet archive, surrounded by the soft glow of a trillion memories. Because we have seen what we become when we embrace war, Sun Ho said. We have seen our own darkness. We have counted our own dead. We built weapons that could end our entire species, and we came close, so very close, to using them. He looked at the three scholars with eyes that held centuries of pain. We choose peace because we understand the price of the alternative. Vex's clicking voice was barely audible. And when peace fails, when someone forces you to fight, Sunho was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft and tired and terribly sad. Then we remember everything we learned. The three scholars left the archive in silence. They did not speak to each other. They could not find words. They had come looking for weakness, for proof that humans were harmless creatures who could be safely ignored. Instead, they had seen something else. They had seen a species that had walked through hell and come out the other side, a species that had mastered the art of destruction and then, by sheer force of will, had chosen to put it down. The Valorians thought humans feared war. They were wrong. Humans feared what they became when war was their only choice. And that fear, the scholars now understood, was the most terrifying thing of all. The 72 hours passed like a slow heartbeat. The galaxy watched. The council debated. And High Counselor Drath gathered his fleet. 400 warships assembled in Valorian space. They were massive vessels, built for destruction, crewed by warriors who had never known defeat. Drath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Flame, and smiled at the stars. The humans send threats, he said to his officers. Let us show them what real power looks like. His fleet moved toward the border, a wall of steel and fire that blocked out the stars. Drath expected the humans to run, to beg, to offer surrender before a single shot was fired. Instead, they came to meet him. Admiral Taehyun Kang commanded the human response from the bridge of the United Earth flagship. The quiet resolve. He was calm, his hands folded behind his back, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. Around him, his crew moved with silent efficiency. No one spoke unless necessary. No one panicked. Admiral, his communications officer reported. The Valorian fleet is holding position at the border. 412 ships confirmed. And our forces? 42 vessels in position, sir. 42 against 400. The numbers were absurd. Any other species would have seen this as a death sentence. But Taehyun knew something the Valorians did not. Numbers were not everything. Open a channel to the enemy flagship, he ordered. Drath's face appeared on the main screen, his yellow eyes gleaming with contempt. Admiral Kang, you bring 40 ships to face my armada. I admire your courage, even if I question your intelligence. High Counselor, Taehyun said calmly. This is your final opportunity. Surrender the officers responsible for the Heaven's Light massacre. Face justice. End this without further bloodshed. Drath laughed. You still do not understand, do you? Humans do not threaten the Valorian Empire. Humans do not make demands. Humans bow, or they burn. He leaned forward. Your 40 ships will be dust in an hour. Your colonies will follow. And your precious Earth will learn to kneel. I see, Taehyun said. Then we have nothing more to discuss. He cut the channel. For a moment, the bridge was silent. All ships, Taehyun said quietly. Begin Operation Silent Thunder. The human fleet moved. They did not charge forward like the Valorians expected. Instead, they scattered, each ship moving on its own trajectory, weaving between asteroids and debris fields. The Valorians tried to track them. But the human vessels were fast, and their movements unpredictable. Lieutenant Jisoo Hwang sat at the drone control station of the carrier ship Endless Sky. She was young, barely 25, but her fingers moved across her console with the speed and precision of a master musician. Before her floated thousands of tiny drones, each one no larger than a human fist. Deploying sensor disruption swarm, she reported. 3, 2, 1, mark. The drones scattered into the void, moving faster than any missile. They reached the Valorian fleet in seconds and began their work. They did not attack. They simply existed, flooding the enemy sensors with false signals, ghost images, phantom threats. On the Eternal Flame, chaos erupted. Sir, our sensors are blind, an officer shouted. We are reading thousands of ships. No, tens of thousands. It is impossible. Calm yourselves. Drath roared. It is a trick. Fire at everything. The Valorian ships opened fire in all directions, their weapons blazing against empty space. They hit nothing. They wasted ammunition. They exhausted their crews. And then, the humans struck. Commander Woojin Baek led the assault team. He was a large man, with scarred hands and quiet eyes. He had fought in 3 colonial insurgencies, survived 2 ship boardings, and trained more special operations soldiers than he could count. Now he stood in the airlock of a stealth shuttle, surrounded by 50 of Earth's finest warriors. "Remember," he said through his helmet communicator. "Minimal casualties. We disable, we do not destroy. We capture, we do not kill. Unless there is no other choice." "Yes, Commander." His team responded. The shuttle pierced the eternal flame's weakened shields like a needle through cloth. Jisu's drones had created a gap, just for a moment, and Woojin's team had flown through it. They breached the hull. They entered the ship. The Valorians were warriors. They were strong. They were brave. But they fought like their ancestors had fought, with brute force and overwhelming numbers. The humans fought differently. They moved through the corridors like ghosts, using every shadow, every corner, every moment of confusion. Their weapons were not designed to kill but to incapacitate. Stun rounds, neural disruptors, gas grenades that put enemies to sleep in seconds. In 3 minutes, Woojin's team reached the bridge. In 4 minutes, High Counselor Drath was on his knees, his hands bound behind his back, staring up at a human soldier with absolute disbelief. "This is impossible," he whispered. "You are humans. You are weak. You are afraid." Woojin removed his helmet. His face was calm, almost sad. "We are human," he agreed. "But we were never weak, and we were never afraid of war." He knelt down to meet Drath's eyes. "We were afraid of what war makes us become. Today, we have tried to become as little of that as possible." Outside, the battle continued. But it was not a battle anymore. It was a systematic dismantling. Human ships targeted engines, not reactors. They disabled weapons, not life support. They crippled vessels but did not destroy them. In 4 hours, it was over. 370 Valorian ships drifted powerless in space. Their crews were alive. Their hulls were intact. Human medical ships moved among them, offering aid, treating wounded, providing supplies. Admiral Taehyun Kang stood on the bridge of the Quiet Resolve and watched the recovery operations. His face was tired, but not triumphant. "Admiral," his officer said, "the Valorian survivors are asking why we did not destroy them. They do not understand." Taehyun nodded slowly. "Tell them the truth. Tell them we did not come here for revenge. We came here for justice. Killing them would have been easy. Living with what they have done will be much harder." Later, on the captured Eternal Flame, Drath was brought before Taehyun. The great warrior who had mocked humanity now looked small and broken. His pride was shattered. "Why?" Drath asked. "You could have killed us all. You had the power. Why did you hold back?" Taehyun looked at him for a long moment. "Because killing is easy," he said quietly. "We learned that a long time ago. We have killed millions of our own kind. We have built weapons that could end worlds. We know exactly how easy it is to destroy." He shook his head. "The hard part is choosing not to. The hard part is finding another way." Drath stared at him. "What kind of species are you?" Taehyun turned away. "The kind that survived itself." The Galactic Council had never been so silent. Every seat was filled. Every species was represented. Thousands of eyes, some biological and some mechanical, watched the central platform with a mixture of fear and wonder. Ambassador Yuna Park walked slowly to the speaking position. She looked the same as she always had. Small, calm, dressed in her simple gray uniform with the blue badge on her chest. But now the delegates saw her differently. Now they understood that her gentleness was not weakness. It was control. 48 hours ago, Yuna began. The Valorian Empire refused our demands. They gathered 400 warships. They threatened to burn our colonies and bring Earth to its knees. She paused. They were wrong. The holographic display above her flickered to life. It showed the battle, the aftermath, the rows of captured ships. It showed Valorian soldiers being treated by human medics. It showed High Counselor Drath in restraints, his empire broken in a single night. 42 human vessels faced 400 Valorian warships, Yuna said. The battle lasted 4 hours. 3,700 Valorian soldiers were captured. 912 were wounded. 43 were killed, all in situations where no other option existed. She let that sink in. On the human side, we lost 7 people, 7 lives we mourn, 7 families who will never be whole again. Murmurs rippled through the hall. The numbers seemed impossible. They defied everything the council believed about warfare. You thought we feared war, Una continued. You looked at our diplomats and our treaties and our endless patience, and you saw weakness. You saw a species afraid to fight. She shook her head slowly. You were wrong. The display changed. Now it showed images from Earth's history, but not the wars, not the destruction. Instead, it showed memorials, museums, children learning about the past, old soldiers weeping at graves. We do not fear war. We remember it. Every generation of humans learns what our ancestors did to each other. We teach our children about the trenches and the bombs and the camps. We show them the ruins. We make them understand the cost. Una's voice grew heavy. We do not hide from our history. We carry it with us, always. The Orwin delegate, Morath, was weeping quietly. He had seen the archives. He understood now. High Counselor Drath asked me what we would do if he refused our demands, Una said. He asked what humans could possibly threaten that would frighten the mighty Valorian Empire. She looked around the hall, meeting eyes from a dozen different species. The answer is simple. We threaten to become what we used to be. Silence. Complete and total silence. For 3 centuries, humanity has chosen peace. We have built a civilization founded on cooperation, on understanding, on the belief that war is a failure of imagination. We have held back our nature because we know what we are capable of. Una's calm voice filled every corner of the great hall. The Valorians woke something we have kept sleeping for a very long time. They are fortunate that we put it back to sleep so quickly. She straightened her uniform and folded her hands. The officers responsible for the Heaven's Light massacre will be transferred to Earth for trial. High Counselor Drath will face charges before the Galactic Tribunal for crimes against peace. The Valorian Empire will pay reparations to the families of those who died. She paused. These terms are not negotiable. No one argued. No one laughed. The Valorian delegation sat in stunned silence. The Keth, who had mocked humanity for years, kept their clicking jaws firmly shut. We do not want your fear, Una said finally. We want your respect. We want your understanding. Humanity chose peace not because we could not fight, but because we learned what fighting costs. We hope this lesson does not need to be repeated. She stepped down from the platform. The hall remained silent as she walked back to her seat. Then, slowly, one delegate began to tap their appendage against their desk. It was the Orwin. Another joined. Then another. Soon the entire hall was filled with the sound of recognition, of acknowledgement, of something close to awe. Una sat down beside her assistant Doyun. Her face was still calm, but her hands were trembling slightly under the table. That was incredible. Doyun whispered. That was necessary. Una replied quietly. I hope it never has to be necessary again. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy changed. The Valorian Empire, humiliated but intact, sued for peace. Their new leadership, younger and wiser than Droth, signed treaties with Earth and began the long process of paying for their crimes. The Keith swarm quietly withdrew their mockery from official records and sent private apologies to the human embassy. Other species began to look at humanity with new eyes. They studied human history, not to find weakness but to understand strength. They read about the wars, the suffering, and the long climb back to hope. Many of them were horrified. Some were inspired. All of them were changed. Dr. Sun Ho Lee returned to his work in the Galactic Archive. The 3 scholars who had visited him spread the word about what they had seen. Soon, beings from across the galaxy came to learn about Earth's past. Sun Ho guided them through the darkness and showed them how humanity had found its way back to light. Captain Minji Cho took a quiet posting on a distant moon. She commanded a small station, watched the stars, and tried not to think about the missile fragments she had studied. Sometimes, late at night, She would look at the names of the 3,000 dead and remember why she had joined the service in the first place. Commander Wujin Beg returned to Earth and spent his remaining years training the next generation. He taught them how to fight, yes, but more importantly, he taught them when not to. He died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 82, surrounded by students who had become his family. Lieutenant Jisoo Huang received a medal for her work during the battle. She refused to wear it. Instead, she donated it to a memorial for the Heaven's Light victims and continued her work in silence. She became one of the finest officers in the fleet, known for her precision and her mercy. Admiral Taehyun Kang retired to a small village on the Korean coast. He lived in a simple house overlooking the sea and spent his days fishing and reading old poetry. Sometimes visitors came to ask him about the battle. He always told them the same thing: we did what we had to do. No more, no less. The goal was never victory. If we had wanted revenge, we would have destroyed them. But revenge is poison. It eats the soul. We chose justice instead. And Yuna Park? She remained ambassador. She continued her work of building bridges and writing treaties and pushing for peace. The other species no longer laughed at her. They listened. They respected. Some even feared, though Yuna hated that most of all. One night, years later, she stood on the observation deck of the council station. The stars spread out before her. The same view she had seen on that long-ago night before everything changed. A young human diplomat joined her, fresh from Earth, eager to learn. "Ambassador," the young woman said. "May I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you think they will ever truly understand us, the other species? Do you think they will ever see us as more than monsters who learn to behave?" Yuna thought about this for a long moment. "Perhaps not," she said finally. "Perhaps they will always be afraid of what we might become. But that is not the point." She turned to face the young woman. "The point is not what they think of us. The point is what we think of ourselves. Every day, we choose who we want to be. Every day, we decide whether to embrace our darkness or reach for something better." She looked back at the stars. "We are not pacifists. We are not saints. We are survivors of our own worst nature. And every day that we choose peace, every day that we hold back the storm inside us, we prove that survival was worth it." The young diplomat nodded slowly, understanding. Far across the galaxy, in 1,000 languages, beings told each other stories about humanity. They spoke of the small species that had conquered itself before it ever reached the stars. They spoke of warriors who chose mercy and soldiers who healed their enemies. And they spoke of a single truth that no one would ever forget. Humans did not fear war. They simply knew its price better than anyone. And that made all the difference.